The TLDR is that you don't really need much more than the core book for your first game, and the most important supplement that you can get is called 13 True Ways, which has some more character options and rule clarifications, and if you're a GM, there are a few other things I'd recommend, but none of it is required, at least not for your first game. So the first thing you need is, of course, the core rulebook, and you might be wondering about the second edition that's now in the works. Well, depending on when you're watching this video, but right now, as I'm making this video, 2E is very much still in playtesting and will probably then go to Kickstarter, so an official release is pretty far out, but from what I've seen so far, second edition is going to be pretty much the same game, just with some streamlining and quality of life updates, but the core game is not changing all that much. So my advice will be to jump in with both feet and don't worry about it. When second edition comes out, we'll learn it and it'll be great. Also, one other thing I'll say, that if you are like me and you like having physical books, 13th Age books are generally much cheaper than almost any other tabletop RPG that I play. The books themselves are not as high print quality as, for example, something like Cubicle 7's Soulbound, which is probably one of the better looking books I've ever seen, but it's also more than $20 cheaper, which I feel is a very decent trade-off. So the core rulebook covers the basics of how to play, how to build characters, how to build battles. It has some lore on the default setting, the Dragon Empire, and it even has a bunch of monsters for you to use. If this is your first time playing 13th Age, I would recommend picking a class from the core book. Some of these classes are pretty straightforward, like the Barbarian, and some have a lot going on, and they're basically their own little game. That might sound intimidating, but personally, I think it's just very well implemented and gives players a ton of variety to sink their teeth in, and it's usually not that complicated, especially compared to 5e. Usually, as a player, you would just have like an extra thing you have to track or something. A quick note for game masters. For this game to work well, you really need a group of players who are just there to have a good time and want to do cool stuff. And I know that sounds obvious and everybody plays to have a good time, but this is kind of like a loosey-goosey, hand-wavy version of D&D. It requires a lot of collaboration, improvisation, and sometimes negotiation between the GM and the players. And if you and your players have this kind of adversarial relationship, or they struggle with being proactive and just kind of want to sit back and be entertained by a game master, this game might not be a great fit, at least not without some expectation setting. So if we're comparing it to D&D, the core rulebook is the player's handbook, dungeon master's guide, and a bit of the monster manual. So there's a section of the video that got corrupted by demons or something, so I'll just quickly recap the thing that was lost, which was there are 2 magic item books and there are 2 bestiary books. The magic item books are self-explanatory. You'll run into a point eventually as a game master where you'll need more magic items, so that's what those books are. They're great. I highly recommend them. I like the way it's implemented. For me, it's not that big of a deal because magic items are really easy to improvise and generate in 13th Age, but the bestiary books are kind of special. They're, of course, like D&D bestiaries. They're a list of monsters that you could use. But the thing that they do really well is theme the monsters around something. So maybe around a fallen icon or some sort of villain or story concept. So you can really just take a chapter out of the bestiary and it gives you monsters of varying levels, like from very early levels all the way to like epic tier of the game. And you can use that, higher level monster as the mini boss or like boss battle or whatever in your game. Especially Bestiary 2 does this really well around the concept of fallen icons. These are really great books. Again, not required because you do get quite a bit of monsters between the core book and 13 True Ways, and there are monsters in almost all of the other books. But these are really good bestiaries, and again, relatively inexpensive compared to other games. Back to the video. 13 True Ways is a massive supplement to the core rulebook. It has additional classes, it introduces multiclassing, it has rule clarifications and some new rules, tons of new monsters, lore for the cities and courts in the Dragon Empire, it has magic items, and it has this amazing chapter called the Game Master's Grimoire, I hope I'm saying that right, that is just a collection of places, plot hooks, NPCs, tons of stuff that you could use as a Game Master, probably in way more games than just 13th Age. This truly is one of the most comprehensive supplements I've ever seen. There's so much stuff in this book. It honestly puts any D&D supplement to shame. I will say that the art isn't as nice, but, you know, these guys don't have Wizards of the Coast money. So honestly, the core book plus 13 True Ways is all you really need. But let's go over some of the other books because you want them. I know you do. I want them too. We got to have all the books, so we might as well know what they're good for. And before I dive into some of those books, I will say that if you are running the game, if you're the GM, definitely get the Game Master resource, the GM screen, basically. The GM screen comes with this little booklet. You can also get a PDF for it. It has amazing stuff for you that will really change your game. It has the mechanics for doing montages. It has more tips for building battles, for hooks. It really summarizes everything you got to know. It's one of the better GM screens I've seen. You're going to hear me say that a lot because I really like this game and I really like most of the products that they have come out with. Okay, so let's start with the Book of Ages. This is a book that can help you either expand the history of your game world, or it can help you build your very own age or ages. In the world of 13th Age, you typically play in the 13th age of this world, meaning there were 12 other ages previously. What's an age? Whatever you decide. 500 years, 1,000 years, sure, whatever fits the story you're trying to tell. The Book of Ages gives you information about past ages that fit with the default setting and again have kind of like these loosey-goosey, hand-wavy plot items that you can use. And it also gives you an engine you can use to create your own, which is really cool, and a lot of game mechanics that have to do with these ages. So monsters, items, character options that go along with their respective ages, including the ones that you create. This isn't a huge book. It's about 120 pages long, and I would call it a nice to have, not a must have, but a really nice to have. I really like this book. In case you haven't noticed, I'm a huge fan of this game. The whole tone of these supplements is, here's some stuff we think is cool, maybe use it, maybe don't, and it's probably going to be useful for other games as well. This is something, like this whole tone is something that I really connect with, but it can be frustrating if you're looking for hard and fast rules though, as this game does assume that at least the Game Master has run tabletop RPGs before, pretty specifically D&D, and is very comfortable making stuff up. In terms of published adventures, there's also quite a bit of content out there, ranging from massive ones like Shards of the Broken Sky and Eyes of the Stone Thief, which can be full campaigns on their own, to smaller adventures like Crown of Axis, Elven Towers, and Shadows of Eldilon, that typically span like a tier of play. You also have several products which are basically collections of battles themed around certain icons. Examples of these are High Magic and Low Cunning and Fire and Faith. A word on all of these is that they are very different from things like the D&D published adventures. They do provide a story framework for you to pull from, but they don't always provide a linear story for you to follow. This might shock you, but I like the way the 13th Age does this way more than I do most D&D adventures. These are sets of things that could happen, that could inspire you, and all the stats you could possibly need to run those things. And you might say, well, if I'm paying $60 for a big old book, I would expect it to do a bit more than that. And I agree. And that's why, you know, most of the D&D books, while some of them are really cool, I really do like some of them, usually they're too expensive for the amount of work you need to put into making the story itself work. But Shards of the Broken Sky doesn't cost $60. Right now, the physical book on Amazon is $32, or you can get it, the PDF, for $20 on DriveThruRPG. So it's cheaper, and I would also say it's a much better story than any of the D&D published adventures that I've read. Anyway, of course, there's more content for 13th Age you can find out there, but I hope that this is enough to get you started. I am not paid or affiliated with Pelgrane Press in any way. I just really love this game, and I know that a lot of people are looking for off-ramps from 5e right now, and I think this is the perfect one. And if you try it, I think you might love it as much as I do. So There you go. Now go play a game.